Hello friends, Namaskar. Today we have with us Major Saras Tripathi, who is a multifaceted personality. He has served in the army for almost a decade and later as human resource manager and airport manager. He is the author of many books including Silent Constitution, Dangerous Consequences and Maun Samvidhan, Bhayanak Parinam. The first chapter of this book is on Automatic Termination of Acts and Laws Act. I think overwhelming majority is not aware about automatic termination of acts and laws and why is it required. And I would request sir to elaborate a little bit on this.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Namaskar. The first chapter is about automatic termination of acts and laws act, and I will start this chapter its introduction by taking a quotation from Prime Minister's speech on 29 January 2016 at New Delhi during Economic Times Global Business Summit. The Prime Minister said himself, "Our country," quote, "our country suffers from an excess of old and unnecessary laws which obstruct people and businesses. We began exercise of identifying unnecessary and outdated laws and repealing them." This is the quotation from the speech of our Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, which he had said during the Economic Times Global Summit. Now, similar statement was given by the previous Prime Minister. I will quote him. We are over legislated and under governed. This was said by Dr. Manmohan Singh in one of his interviews. Why I have quoted these two Prime Ministers? Because they represent two different political parties and two different governments. But the similarity is that both have emphasized on the requirement of repealing the laws or excess of laws that we are having. And why this has got accumulated over a period of time? Because there was no sunset clause in the laws. There was no provision that these laws will automatically die. Now coming to the book, what is the proposal? Like the book is in a very scientific format. Like it starts, what is the proposal? So what is the proposal? The proposal is to enact a law that will ensure automatic termination of all future acts and laws. Every act in the stage of bill should be classified as with definite life and indefinite life. In other words, what I am proposing in this chapter is that every law at the stage of bill should have a provision that what will be the life of the law. So the proposal is to divide these laws in two parts at the bill stage. As we know, the process of formation of laws is like this. A bill is proposed in the parliament in lower or upper house, that is in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. Once it is passed by the required majority, it goes to the another house. And when it is passed from there, it goes to the president for his signature. Once president signs the bill, it becomes act. So conversion from bill to act is once these three processes are completed. So my proposal is at the stage of bill only, every bill should have the proposal in first, second or third para appropriately. That should classify all the bills in two parts. One is bills with definite life and bills with indefinite life. Bill rather act. So those laws which we feel are likely to have very long requirement for a very long period, those laws should be defined as indefinite laws, and those laws which we anticipate will have limited period life, or our requirement is for say 5 years, 10 years or 20 years, they should have a definite life, and in the bill itself it should be mentioned that the life of this law will be say 10 years. So what is the advantage of this? The advantage is that the law, once the expiry date comes as defined in the act itself, will die its own death. In the legal language we call it sunset clause. Every law should have a sunset clause, and the long term profit is that we will be saving ourselves, our nation, our statute book from unwanted and outdated laws, dead laws that are not required. To just give an example, as we have discussed earlier also, Mr. Vajpayee, when he became Prime Minister, he had to set up a committee to identify the laws. A committee was set up to identify outdated laws, and approximately 400 laws were repealed by him. To be precise, 415. Later on, when Modi ji became Prime Minister, again he had to do the same exercise, and 2434 laws were repealed by Modi ji. In totality, more than 2500 laws have been repealed, and the process is still going on. So that means approximately 2500 laws were in the statute book that were rotting, they were not required but still existing, and they were a cause of concern for the citizens because they were being misused by the authorities, including police, to harass the citizens. So once we put the sunset clause, the laws will automatically die and there will be no need for setting a committee for repeal. This is the first chapter that I have proposed. It's a very small chapter, but very important from the point of view of the law and the requirement of law and repeal of the law. It was not missing on part of our framers of our constitution. They were very learned people, and the galaxy of learned men was probably one of the rarest in the world. However, I will just read out from the speech of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar that will quite clarify the position. Dr. Ambedkar has said these iconic lines about the constitution so aptly. He says, quote, "However good a constitution may be, if those who are implementing it are not good, it will prove to be bad. However bad a constitution may be, if those implementing it are good, it will prove to be good," unquote. So the point is, the framers of the constitution, including the Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, they have given us a very good constitution. But the point is, those who are manning this constitution, there are certain things that need to be incorporated or repealed by them. Constitution is a living organ. That is what Dr. Ambedkar has said. A living organ needs a constant repair, a constant freshening up as per requirement of the time. So certain laws need to be repealed, certain laws need to be amended, certain laws need to be enacted. That is why we have more than 100 laws that have been enacted. So he himself has said that as per requirement, the constitution is so flexible that as per requirement we can create the law or repeal the law. So we cannot blame at all to the framers of the constitution. They have given one of the best constitution. The problem comes that where constitution is silent, because everywhere law cannot be made. That is why we have given the name silent constitution. Silent is not bad. Silent has no problem. Constitution has no problem. Constitution is somewhere constitution is silent. Like there is a requirement of law which propped up over a period of time. So it is the responsibility of the people who are manning the constitution now, those who are running the government. And as far as the length of the constitution is elaboration is concerned, like you said, we have among the most elaborate constitution. Yes, of course, our constitution contains 444 articles, 12 parts, 12 schedule, 444 articles in 22 parts and 12 schedules, and it runs approximately 150,000 words, that is 1,50,000 words. So the point is that constitution has tried to inculcate everything which is possible and which the framers of the constitution thought is required. But need of the time is that if requirement is there, we should enact the laws. One thing. Second thing is that the laws that need repeal are not created by the framers of the constitution. I am talking about the laws that were enacted by the East India Company, like the laws that have been repealed by Vajpayee ji and Modi ji are those laws which were enacted in 1851. 1851, there was even British Crown had not taken over. These laws were created by a corporate house, that is East India Company, because after the first war of independence in 1857, the British Crown, British Parliament took over the administration of India. So these laws were created by East India Company. If Constitution had not done anything to repeal them, it was the responsibility of the subsequent governments. They should have repealed these laws. But nobody did it. Finally, after approximately more than 50 years, it was done by the government of Shri A.B. Vajpayee ji. So we cannot blame it to the framers of the constitution, but to the subsequent rulers. Now coming to the repeal of laws, how many laws were repealed? That is the 415, as I have said earlier, were repealed by Shri Vajpayee ji, and to be precise, what is written in the book, 2239 laws were repealed by in totality, because subsequently Modi government repealed 1824 laws. So as far as your question is concerned, that our constitution is very elaborate, yes it is, and the constitution has done whatever was possible, but as far as framing the subsequent laws is concerned, it is the responsibility of the legislature and the government. There are many advantages of this sunset clause, as they call it in the lexicon of law, and what I have called the defining the life of the laws. And to understand what are the advantages, I will just read out whatever written in the book that I have enlisted. The advantage of having such a law where we ensure that every law has a life are like this. One is, it will prevent accumulation of obsolete and outdated acts and laws. Two, it will prevent outdated laws remaining alive and operational. It will ensure that every act, law enacted in the past has a chance for relook after the self life or definite life is over. Every act, law will be renewed by the competent law making body at fixed intervals. Hence, all the amendments required, keeping in mind the need of the day, can easily be incorporated during enactment. If the law is not required anymore, it will automatically die and will not remain as an obsolete obstacle and a tool in the hands of the regulating authorities to harass the citizenry. It will save the citizenry from avoiding harassment from law enforcing agencies, citing using archaic and outdated laws, but alive and still operational. Like you asked previously that give me some examples, so the example is coming here. There was a law that was known as, it is as old as 1853, it was known as Shore Nuisances, Bombay and Colaba Act 1853. The law was enacted in 1853 about the maintaining law and order in the on the seashores. That was absolute law as far as today's modern age is concerned, but it was in the statute book. It was repealed by the government. So that is why I said that archaic and outdated laws will automatically die. And sixth advantage of this is it will lead to a classification of act and laws based on need, duration or characteristic. Till date our laws are not even classified except based on their origin, like central, state or concurrent. What I am recommending is classification of laws based on their life, like indefinite life and definite life. And till now how the laws are being classified is, that is concurrent list or union list or the state list. So it will have this advantage. If the law is further required in original form and no change is required, it can be reenacted. It's not that a law we gave a life for 10 years, but we felt that after 10 years that this law is required, so we can reenact it with the amendments. Eighth advantage is, if it needs some amendment, the same can be brought in and then passed again by the parliament or the legislative assembly, as the case may be. It will ensure that only relevant act and laws are in operation. Similarly, states also have their share of this kind of outdated statute, rather what I have called in the book statute chaos, that also needs to be dealt with in a similar way. So these are the advantages. I have enlisted 10, whereas there can be many, if one thinks there can be many, but this is precisely what advantage we will have. In nutshell we can say, it will save, the biggest thing will happen by this will that any law that is forgotten and that becomes outdated will not remain operational, it will automatically die. So there will be no accumulation of laws and there will be no harassment of citizenry. So this is the advantage, and it's so easy. It has been recommended by a few learned men, including our ex-Vice President Shri Venkaiah Naidu ji, and it needs consideration and enactment by the government and the parliament. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for elaborating wonderfully on Termination of Acts and Laws Act. I think it will be very useful for the lawmaking agencies, our legislature, and I hope they take cognizance of the matter and they read the book, they try to understand the logic behind this act, and I'm sure it will be beneficial for the people of India.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Namaskar.